You know when you see a headline for something and you have to do a double take just to make sure that what you read first time around was correct? That definitely applies to this when I read that there was an experimental V8 motor that was made that was so powerful it was nicknamed the Killer, which sounds like something out of a spoof or a comedy or a horror film or something like that. But no, this was actually real, and I'm going to tell you about it today. Now, shout out to Carbuzz for covering this. I'm going to go over the article they made about this because it just absolutely needs to be seen and read and heard about to be believed. But yeah, this was actually true, and it was absolutely insane. So let's dive in, guys. Let's have a look at this. From the very early 1960s, the American muscle car competition was extremely fierce. Each automaker was hard at work trying to outdo one another every single turn. Even General Motors subsidiaries such as Buick, Chevrolet, and Pontiac were fiercely competing with one another in a quest for ultimate muscle dominance. Very few things were off the table in terms of the rules of engagement. Another automaker involved in the muscle car wars was Oldsmobile. Their entry, the 442, was regarded as one of the top contenders. In its most powerful iteration, the 442 W30 received a 455 CID Oldsmobile rocket V8 producing 370 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. Not a slouch by any stretch of the imagination, and one of the most torque-laden engines that General Motors have ever produced. However, in the late 1960s, Oldsmobile engineers were hard at work creating an engine that would be known as the Killer. So here's why the Killer came into being. The muscle car development race in the 1960s and early 1970s made for one of the most competitive eras in American automotive history. Oldsmobile, whose 442 was an impressive car, was still relatively obscure compared to iconic muscle cars such as Pontiac with its GTO and Chevrolet with its Chevelle. Oldsmobile saw an opportunity to blow up the competition and tried to make that dream a reality. The thing was, back in the muscle car days, General Motors had an edict that banned the use of multi-carbureted engines in anything but the Corvette. This was done to prevent other brands under the GM umbrella from making a car faster or more potent than the most powerful Corvette on sale at the time. So, Oldsmobile took the edict literally. The resulting idea was to be called the W43, an experimental engine design based on the existing Oldsmobile 455 CID rocket big block V8. Gotta be very careful when you say that. Of course, it didn't have a multi-carb design. There was reportedly a multi-carbureted design prototype, but it was never used. Instead, Oldsmobile engineers decided to get creative with the 455 CID cylinder heads, making more power without resorting to gigantic carburetors or multiple ones. The answer Oldsmobile engineers came upon was to create cylinder heads with 4 valves per cylinder, something that wasn't really heard of outside of motorsport at the time. Now, as this is a pretty rare engine, specs on it are very hard to come by. However, we do know that it made 440 horsepower, reportedly a very conservative state of tune, although there were whispers that the motor could create up to 560 horsepower, but these claims have not been backed up by actual facts or legitimate testing. However, even making 440 horses was impressive for the time, as very few muscle cars could compete with that figure. It might not seem like that much today, but yeah, back in the 60s, that was a lot. In essence, Oldsmobile borrowed a tried and true cylinder head design from a diesel engine of the time, as the 4-valve cylinder head used by Oldsmobile closely resembled those found in Cummins and Detroit diesel engines. Increasing the amount of air-fuel mixture you can force into a combustion chamber by adding valves can increase the power, which is why more valves typically equal more power. That's an oversimplification, as there's more to making power than the number of valves, but it is typically one way manufacturers can complete output. Hence why such manufacturers these days with huge engines like Bugatti normally have a W16, and Ferrari, of course, very famous for their V12 engine. On top of the revolutionary heads, Oldsmobile also tweaked the engine block. A new 4-bolt main cap was installed, and the spark plugs were located smack dab in the middle of the valve covers. This spark plug location is what sparked rumours that the Oldsmobile W43 was actually a Hemi, but it was not. So yeah, there you go, guys. The killer. I mean, by today's standards, it might not seem that big of a deal really, but back then, 50, 60 years ago, that was a lot of power, and the fact that it got that nickname, I think, really speaks volumes as to what an absolute beast it was. But yeah, I was going to log off for the day a little earlier, but I saw this story come up, and I'm like, I've got to cover this while I'm thinking about it. I got to get my initial reaction to this, because I'd never heard of that before. But there we go, guys. What's the most monstrous engine of all time in the automotive industry? Is it the killer, or is it something else? Your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see much more like this, and have a fantastic day, guys. Have a great weekend. Loving the support on the channel. You guys are really watching our content in great numbers, so I'm really appreciating that. Let's keep it up. Let's keep going. This is just the beginning of the journey, guys. So yeah, see you soon for more content on the world of motoring and cars just like this.